Hi, I'm Courtney Gould, and this is my weekly reflection for week 6. So the first chapter I read was Tab chapter 5, and that is individual differences in second language learning. And this was really broken up into two main components, and that was Wong-Fillmore's social and cognitive strategies. So I'll go through each of those strategies. So the first one was social, which is join a group and act as if you understand what's going on, even if you don't. So this was where a child would join a group and sit there silently and really just observe um, you know, what the other students were doing. It was just exposing them to the language. Next was cognitive, which was assume that what people are saying is directly relevant to the situation at hand or what they or you are experiencing. So this would be like where, like, if a student was playing with a car and they were talking about how it's a car, the student would then be absorbing that, okay, that must be a car, that's what a car is. The next was social, and it gives the impression with a few well-chosen words that you can speak the language. And then it went on to cognitive, which was get some expressions you understand and start talking. So these two go together, and this is really breaks into the two strategies that we talked about this past week, which was telegraphic and formulaic phrases. And so they start to sound more like the members of the group because they are having further exposure of that language, and cognitively the children are given material and they start to process it and reconstruct it and use it as best they can. The next strategy was cognitive, and that was look for reoccurring parts in the formulas you know. The next strategy was also cognitive, make the most of what you said, and then also cognitive, work on big things, save the details for later. So this is more when the student was moving from the formulaic phrase to the productive phase. So they started to really understand words and try and put them in sentences and make phrases out of them. And in this part, they're really not too concerned about being wrong because they have some confidence in what they're saying. And the last strategy was social, and it says counting on your friends for help. So this is where your English learning student really sits there and makes great friends with an English student, and they really feed off of what they're saying. They communicate with this person, and they can really help grow themselves by listening to them. The next part of the chapter that I talked about was underlying factors. And these are 4 factors that determine how available social and cognitive strategies are. The first one was motivation. So the student must be motivated. They must want to learn the new language. This is helpful when there are no other people that speak their home language because they have no way to communicate, so they kind of have no choice but to learn the new language. This can also kind of be determined as like the nonverbal period. Also, the parents are a big role in this. If the parents really are interested in learning the new language too, then it's going to motivate the child to learn it as well. Whereas if they aren't motivated, then the child's not going to care because why? The next was exposure. So this is like exposure they may have had to the language prior to coming to the classroom. This can help a child pick up the language quicker. It also is how much time they're, exposed to this new language, and if they're using the new language in an outside situation, not just the classroom. The next was age, and this basically says that younger children have an easier time because they aren't having to use the language in such a sophisticated manner. But it also is a little bit of a struggle for them too because their cognitive development isn't quite there. And then lastly, it was personality. So, shy and reserved children are more likely to, take a step back and really think about what they're doing, whereas like someone that's outgoing and socially oriented is going to be very successful and try and make all these efforts to learn the new language and go from there. The next thing I read was the Ada and Campoy Unit 5, the power of transformation. And, basically talks about how nothing stays the same, something always transforms. But in order for things to transform, people have to make a transformation for things like socially to transform. It talked about how human condition doesn't restrict us. It talks about how we've been to the moon, we've been deep under the sea, and, there are things that we do that we shouldn't be able to do. And that's because we're able to transform. And we need to encourage our students to be transformative in their education. And, you could do this by having their parents get involved, help students understand that there's not just one path in life. You take many paths, and that's okay. Some are good and some are bad. The next thing I read was the picture word induction model PowerPoint. And so, this basically just talks about the effectiveness of combining text with pictures in the model that language learners use in diverse proficiency. So by using pictures, it's really going to help the student understand what they're seeing, and it allows them to put 1 and 2 together. It also talked about CLT, which is cognitive load theory, which is, info that is stored, borrowing and recognizing principles, narrowing limits of change principles, natural info processing system, and redundancy effect. So this is basically, where students learn something and they put it in their long-term memory, and it's basically there forever. So if it's not put in the long-term memory, saying that they didn't learn it. Overall, like, the PWI model has been very successful, but there's no scientific research to show that it is 100% substantial and that it is extremely effective. So that's why it's not super used, but that doesn't mean it won't work for your classroom. The last thing I read was the article on scaffolding for success in secondary ELLs. So scaffolding is an instruction technique associated with the zone of proximal development. So teachers build upon a child's prior knowledge. This can help improve a child's independent performance. It can also help them learn new concepts gradually by releasing the responsibility by giving them the option to learn it. In order for this to be done, you need to have a supportive learning environment. Students need to be able to encourage, able to ask questions, provide feedback, and support their peers. In this situation, you're more of a mentor than a facilitator, or in a facilitator of knowledge. You're not demanding something out of them. You just help them. Some of the things that you can use. So in reading, there's thieves, which is activating prior knowledge. So have the students do a pre-read ahead of time and activate their prior knowledge and see what they can figure out beforehand. Next was GIST, which is improving comprehension. It stands for generating interactions between schema and text. So this is a comprehensive strategy used both during and after the reading. And it really helps you pull out important vocabulary terms and concepts to summarize the reading. Next was in a speaking way. So this was cogna, an interactive activity. And this allows the students to really interact with each other. They're going to work together. They share their ideas, and it really enhances their listening and speaking skills. And the last thing was constructive conversation skills poster, which is a group work. So, they work together. So you could put students that were very strong English speakers with students that aren't so strong, and they can feed off each other and help each other. So overall, scaffolding allows students to take a more active role in the classroom. It needs to be a supportive learning environment, and the students need to be able to take ownership of their own learning. This was my summary for this week. Thank you.